Good afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Media Watch. My name is Bob Lovegren. We have Rob Raffelli. We have equal things in the show here, basically. It's his show just as much as it is to mine. We do Media Watch here about different things happening, which brings up the, as we speak, as a matter of fact, the Frenchie Newsom, I call him Frenchie, and DeSantis are having a debate. And I guess I have to watch that. I just have to watch that because because this may be a prelude to the actual both of the candidates may be end up in an election. Who knows what'll really happen in the whole thing. At any rate, we have to kind of watch and see if there's any actual fisticuffs. But at any rate, Rob is going to start off the show talking about the happenings in Argentina.
Yes, indeed. We're not the only country in the world that has elections, and so odd things happen in other places. And what I'm noticing, of course, is that when other countries elect someone who's conservative after having elected liberals and leftists for a while, the next thing one hears is, he's the Trump of wherever. I can't remember the Prime Minister of Italy right now, but they called her the Trump of Italy. Well, now we have, let's see, I can't think of the new president, but let's bring him up. The new president of Argentina, the president-elect, is he's a libertarian capitalist. What are they calling him? They're saying, yes, his name is Javier Milei, and they're saying far-right libertarian Javier Milei wins after a rival concedes. And that's why I've thrown up, I add some of the colorful stuff here. I throw up my caption, which is, I guess I don't know what far-right means anymore. I mean, really, I don't. I mean, here's somebody who, he wants to reduce the number of cabinet positions and departments that he thinks are, well, really counterproductive. So he actually, part of his campaign was he had a big board with departments spread across the top, and he's saying, Department of Energy, out. He says, Department of Cultural Equality, out. and each one he names, and he says, afuera, out.
But before the show started, you're talking about Argentina as being the Paris, Buenos Aires anyway, Paris of the South America, and it was a very wealthy country.
Let's take a look at this. This is Argentina. This is Buenos Aires in the 1920s, and a common expression all over the world, including in America and in the UK, was as rich as an Argentine. Well, they were about ranked second or third in the world in terms of per capita income.
Wow.
It was doing great. They had great mineral resources. Their agriculture was selling fantastically. Gigantic amounts of Argentine beef being shipped all over the place. Anyway, it was very prosperous. And now let's go back to this. This is a graph that Javier Milei liked to use, as he said, well, here with the old constitution, this was Argentina's ranking in the world, pretty close to the top most of the time. So then we had the new constitutional reform. He says after that, 1949. He says then they got rid of the old liberal, which in this case it really means libertarian model, and they brought in the models of economics that were populist, protectionist, or developmentalists. And everybody was going to intervene in the economy. They were going to say, well, we're going to do it a different way. We're going to direct it. We're going to pick the winners and losers. And really the only winners and stuff like that tends to be politicians. Thomas Sowell, I think, said it best one of the craziest ways that you can make decisions on a national basis is to put those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. If you have a business and you're wrong, who suffers? Well, your employees and you. You lose the money. But if you're the government and you're directing how business and industries have to do things, well, those industries may tank, but the directors in government don't tank. In fact, with a crisis like this, they may need more money to sort it out.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm thinking of Jimmy Carter, who would like to say, I think we could do more.
Well, that's the thing. Perons were in power right at that point, too, in the late 40s, early 50s, and so on.
Yeah.
Of course, he was, I don't know, he was very good friends with the Germans.
Yes.
That was one of the countries that did not declare war against Germany. Brazil did, not right away. When the war turned around, they actually sent troops into a division of soldiers into the Brazil did during World War II and all that. But Argentina didn't do that. In fact, the Argentine and Brazil too, the southern part of Brazil anyway, were a lot of the basically the criminals of the Nazi regime ended up.
Yeah.
Mengele was there.
Mengele, yes. There was some famous German ship that was hemmed in and couldn't get out of basically Argentine and Brazilian territorial waters.
No, he was off of Uruguay. He was in Montevideo. That was the battleship. They had to sink it themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, that was in Montevideo.
Okay, so they scuttled it at Montevideo, but you can believe, where are they? They're at the mouth of the Rio de la Plata.
Right.
And they knew that they were close to places that they could at least fade away into the woodwork.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a battleship, or not quite a battleship, I guess, but he ended up, the captain of it basically scuttled aboard and he went down with it.
Did he really?
Yeah, he went down with it. He wasn't a prisoner of war and like that. But this is when way off the subject, but this is when the Germans really controlled the Atlantic with the submarines and these other ships and so on, which would go out and just blow up merchant ships and so on. The United States didn't really get going until at least middle of 1943, before they really had a defense against all the submarines and things like that and so on. And this guy got caught in the Montevideo, and it was all against very small ships, but they were all British. And they
were prepared to put him down.
Yeah, they were prepared to sink him, and he decided to scuttle the ship and go down with it.
Sink it or take it. I can't
remember the name of the ship. But
both of those things escaped me, and I feel bad about that. But anyway,
it was Perón's area, and I guess this really is.
This is Brazil's standing in the world in terms of economies.
Yeah.
Since the 1949 reforms, as now of course they still had the grasslands, they still had the mines, any deposits, they still had all of that.
Yeah.
And the cattle would grow just as well as before. What they had was bad management. So much of what was going on in the world is a crisis of management, where if bad managers fail upward, or if bad managers aren't tossed, then their practices continue. And the only thing you could hope for is they would somehow learn. But when people don't learn from failure, if they're rewarded for it.
And it goes along with again. Perón is a dictator essentially. He was one of those guys that they got elected for life,
and
it kept on going. It just kept on going down and so on. And it just relates to Stalin tried to do the same thing. They thought they knew how this guy in North Korea does the same thing and so on, not letting people just do what they had been doing. No, they just let them starve to death in the Ukraine, for example, and things like that and so on. They thought that this is managed farms.
The collectivized
manage
farms.
your own land.
Well, let us not forget that Stalin knew perfectly well what would have saved millions of lives, possibly tens of millions of lives, and that would have been to liberalize and let the farmers who are doing great continue to do great.
What do they call them?
Kulaks was that's what they called the successful Ukrainian farmers.
Right.
And of course this was a class envy thing, that you said, those are your class enemies. They're rich and you're poor, and you're poor because they're rich. They were rich because they were making a lot of food that people want to eat.
Yeah, right.
That's one of those things. You satisfy a need, and the people whose need is satisfied, they pay you. It's a famous technique, Anyway, Stalin knew that liberalizing the farms instead of collectivizing them would have saved tens of millions of lives. And when it was proposed to him, he said to them with that moral superiority, "Do you believe in communism or don't you?" Yes, I believe.
Heavily, right. Wanted to keep his head. That's for sure.
That's right.
And that's what happened in Ukraine. Of course, it was tragic. That was like 2 or 3 million people starved to death in the 30s.
Well, they were marched off their farms where they were actually producing food for themselves and others.
It's a breadbasket of the whole country, basically, and a lot of other places too. They ship it. In fact, they even do it today, of course.
Yeah, but they were marched away from
when they get it out of there.
Marched away from their food and marched away from their farms and out to some place where they had nothing, where they were able to starve to death in the winter.
Yeah.
So Stalin brought you this too. He says, "One man's death is a tragedy." He says, "1 million deaths is a statistic."
Statistics, that's what he said, right? That had to do with the battle when the World War II. A lot of Russians died there. And by the way, as an aside, when Hitler invaded Russia, the Nazis, Nazis, were welcomed in Ukraine. They thought they were being liberated.
Yes,
because of what Stalin had done to them.
Exactly.
They didn't turn out too good, of course.
No, well, that's
worse. It was worse.
That's where I say, well, I'm out of good choices. You chose this.
The Germans didn't see it the same way. Put it that way.
No.
Well, they were the same thing, I mean, I don't know. This whole idea here is that you get this governments that they know what they're doing, and of course that's the same with our government here. They think they know what you should be, the climate change and so on.
Yeah, total hoax. Anyway, I wanted to beat up on Nikki Haley, but I'm going to leave that alone. What I want to do instead is I'm going to beat up on a policy that Nikki Haley appears to have approved of. It's not her policy, but there seems to be a move afoot that it would be a change to the internet, and specifically about people commenting or liking or anything else, commenting on things online where they want you to use your real actual name. Now, I can see, look, I've seen people trash other people horribly, and they're hiding behind their anonymity, and it looks awful and it looks cowardly.
That's pretty much on the internet, though.
Yes, on the internet, exactly. And so that looks awful and it looks horrible, and frankly, I don't like it. But now I'm looking at the flip side of this, which is you can say something today which is absolutely true, but still be persecuted for it because the truth is not popular. In fact, I'm going to use an example from Ireland right now. Just a few days ago, there was some guy in Ireland who, outside some school, stabbed a couple of little girls and the mother of one of them. And a lot of folks thought this was horrible, and they were demonstrating against it. And especially, turns out the guy was a Muslim, unlike, let's say, most Irishmen.
Yeah.
And in fact, the press in Ireland quickly said, "Wait, he was an Irish citizen." Well, as it turns out, 20 years ago, he was a Moroccan who immigrated illegally.
Yeah.
But instead of being thrown out, he was eventually given, for a visa, and then eventually a passport, and he got free Irish citizenship. And in fact, he's been living off government largesse for 17 of the last 20 years.
Yeah,
good deal for Ireland. And then he decided that he was pissed off enough that he stabbed some women, or a woman and a couple of kids.
Yeah, my God.
So what do you know, as it turns out, most Irishmen would say, "I don't like that. I think that's bad. I don't like that policy."
Yeah.
And so some of them were out in the street yelling about it, and people were commenting on it online.
Yeah.
The Irish president is saying, those are hateful expressions that those people are saying, and we're going to find out, we're going to come after them. So here you are, you can say something true, you can say something that is a perfectly reasonable opinion. You could be wrong, but you could at least be saying, I don't think I really like having a bunch of Moroccans who are not assimilated into Irish culture, filling out Irish culture. I don't like that. So it's a legitimate opinion, whether you agree with it or you don't. But In this case, if they can say, and I know your name, oh, look at that. You can't get a job anymore. You don't qualify for benefits anymore.
Or I'm going to come and stab you.
Yeah, or
I'm going to
yes,
find out where you live and I'm going to come in and stab you.
and of course, now that we have,
Some do.
now we're going to be publishing your real name.
Yeah.
This is, in other words, you're doxed.
Yeah,
which is, and see, I always say, people who dox, they don't want to kill you. They want somebody else to kill you. And then they will be able to say, I was just telling the truth, words have consequences. I just told her, I didn't mean for him to be stabbed. I just told you where he lived and where his kids went to school.
Right. At what times he does it and so on and so forth. Where he works, the whole banana.
So,
it brings up the whole subject, of course, of social media and so on. This, freedom of the press is one thing, but you got to figure that the founders would I don't know what they would, when they see what people can say and so on, like you get something like that and you get 1 million responses and everybody's got an opinion about it and so on. My only answer to that is, along with freedom of speech, is the freedom to listen. You don't have to believe. I would tell people out there, don't believe anything you read, you see on the internet. Don't believe any of it, basically, because it's just it goes crazy. Well, and to turn it around, there's this guy in Vermont, of all places, stabbed or shot, in fact, 3 Muslim guys, Muslim students who are going to a movie or something like that, in Vermont, of all places. I think it's amazing, and that now none of them got killed, but actually one of them looks like he's not going to be able to walk again. Ooh. But that's this whole thing is a hatred of things, and of course, organizing these mobs. How do you think they get all those 10,000, 20,000, 200,000 people in a square all at once in one day? All of a sudden they show up. It's the internet. It goes around and gets shared by a whole bunch of people, and of course right away they show up. That's how Deltopia started. There was really no down in Isla Vista. They have it goes on the internet, and nobody has really organized it. It gets on the internet, and then people all show up. I think it was like 10,000 people on Isla Vista Beach for the first one.
That was probably Deltopia, but we also had huge influxes for Isla Vista's Halloween.
Yeah.
And that had gotten written up in Playboy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but that ended. It's not nothing anymore. But I'm just saying that there's these crash things that they have. I forget what they call it. They have this music all of a sudden, and 200 people show up and dance and stuff like that.
Flash mobs or
flash mobs, flash mobs and so on. That it's so easy now today with the internet and so. I got a feeling that I go to AI too at the same time. There's a lot of changes going on here that are not maybe not favorable. We'd have to live with these things and so on.
Let me just mention, since you mentioned flash crowds.
You're not going to do away with them, put it that way. Go ahead.
Since you mentioned flash crowds, that there's an amazingly good precursor in fiction. Larry Niven, the science fiction author, whom I've met, Larry Niven wrote a few stories that were centered around little teleportation booths, but in this case we don't have that, but we have the next best thing with the internet telling everybody where something's going to happen. So these stories were related, but one was called Flash Mob, or Flash Crowd, and it had, which turned into a riot, and then the riot lasts for 3 days because everybody's coming in to see how great the riot is.
Yeah.
And this was taking place in the Santa Monica Mall, and in fact the central character in that was a reporter who may have sort of accidentally triggered it just by getting the first video and sending it out. He did not want to go down in history as the man who caused the mall riot. So so he was trying to find solutions to that. But the other part was the crime involved, because look, giant riots, would that possibly be a great cover for smash and grab? So
yeah, that's another thing too. It's the same. We're going to do a smash and grab at a particular store, show up and with a mask on and so on, and this with their crowd. But even so, it gets out it just gets out. People already share it basically. It just gets out to a lot of people.
But we see it. It's also just
dangerous, very dangerous.
We also see it planned as organized crime, where cars roll up, a bunch of people smash in, they take a bunch of stuff, and of course the stores are telling their employees, don't get hurt and don't. In the bad old days when I was a lad, there would have been guards there who shot them dead. And
that's the thing. You don't have any recourse, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The shop people, well, the owner of the store doesn't have any recourse. I saw a film about the guy trying to do that in a little store, and the guy came out from the back and beat the crap out of this guy, and he ran. Mm-hmm. The guy that was doing it ran out, but he had a few bruises on him when he left. That's for sure. But again, I say it's just one of those things that's going to be really hard to. We got to work into the society. Let's just face it. I got my phone. You got a phone right now. In fact, I should turn it off. I didn't have it on right now.
And it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Anyway, I'll just throw in, if anybody wants to look at Flash Crowd, you should also look at the other short story, The Last Days of the Permanent Floating Riot Club.
Yeah.
Because that was the criminal organization that said, these riots are pretty good. We can steal a lot during riots.
Yeah. That's the thing about it, then you get you go to AI, artificial intelligence, and you get labeled because of certain things that you looked up on the internet, things that you wanted to find out more about, and so on. Next thing you know, you're getting all kinds of video and stuff to sell, and people trying to sell you these hats that I wore. In fact, I ordered some, and finally found out where to get them. Like, it was really hard to find, and ended up getting them. I got ads for these hats for 2 years solid, almost every day on the internet to sell me. I bought 10 at one time. They wanted me to buy more of these things, and so of course they didn't know how many I had and so on. But you get labeled, I guess. That's maybe that's what AI really. You get labeled as to what you like or don't like and so on, and it may be embarrassing even.
Well, it's this simple.
To you.
If you were thinking about selling something to somebody, say, well, who do you know who's already bought one?
Yeah.
See,
now we know. Now they can find out real easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
do you want to beat up on Nikki Haley, or do you?
I
like Nikki Haley.
I know you do. Next time.
I don't know why. Now you're making me doubtful a little bit. I have to look into this more.
I'll come with more data, so when I bash on Nikki Haley, I'll have something. I don't want to bash with nothing to go with. But let's see. I just feel like showing something about let's imagine, for instance, that 2024 is going to feature Biden versus Trump. Now, as we know, it might not be either one of them.
Right, or they both might be in jail.
They both might be in jail. Either one of them or both might no longer be, let's just say, effective.
Alive even. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, as we've noted in this business, in politics, 2 weeks is an eternity. So, but here's one of Biden's pitches about 2024. Trump will make the migration worse. And I'm thinking, you mean worse than opening up the border? Because I tend to say, and this is me, I say, strange, Trump's remain in Mexico policy worked fine.
Yeah.
And I want to actually elaborate on this, because this is, remain in Mexico was about, we said, if you are coming to the border because you want to claim asylum, because you are in fact, you're an actual genuine refugee who should qualify for asylum, we say, well, as it turns out, unless it's Mexico that you're fleeing, then you are in a safe country and you can stay there until we have time to adjudicate your case.
Right.
Because if you want asylum, then you need to be judged by there are judges for that. So, and if they're overloaded, you do one of two things. Well, I say you hire enough people to clear the load.
Right.
So it's just like saying, that's a lot of litter, but I only have one guy, so it's going to take 8.7 years to. No, hire some temps and get in here and get it cleaned up this week.
Yeah, right.
It's not hard to figure out.
Yeah, Border Patrol, they got been reduced, I guess, and it's terrible the way they can. 2 million people. I mean, it's like tens of thousands of people per day.
Well, during the Trump presidency, there were oodles of immigration lawyers who went to Mexico to counsel people as to how to claim refugee status.
Yeah.
Now, of course, what we're seeing currently is people are stepping across the border saying, "I'm here for asylum," and they get, "Okay, well, here's your court date. I want you to show up in 8 years, and we'll adjudicate that."
Yeah.
Well, again, I said, first of all, I have no way of knowing if they'll ever show up.
Yeah.
But in 8 years, who knows?
Yeah.
And it's not fair to them. But of course, I'm here seeking asylum. Well, in that case, here's your green card. Here's, of course, you're hungry. We're going to have to give you a voucher for a hotel. We're going to have to give you a voucher for some food. And of course, a bunch of the people arriving are minors. Now, I don't know if, especially when they're unaccompanied, and you release them into the interior, they might be going to the arms of loving people who will take care of them. Or they might be being trafficked. Or they might be forced into child labor. We don't know. And
well, actually, it's the cartels.
Yeah, well, that's the cartels who bring them, at the very least.
And then, now you owe me.
you don't illegally cross the U.S. border from Mexico without paying the cartels.
Yeah, right.
The cartels, whatever you think about this side of the border, the cartels own the other side of the border.
Right, exactly.
So
it's a big business, too. A really big business for them.
Let's go with
many billions per month.
We've probably had, during the Biden years, somewhere on the order of 5 or 6 million border crossers. Those people probably paid a minimum of $2,000 and probably more like $5,000 a piece
to the
cartels.
Price. I know the price. It's $5,000.
Okay, there we go. I didn't know the price, but
I talked to people what they paid. They say it was $5,000.
It had to be in the thousands.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm looking at 5 million people times $5,000 is $25 billion.
Yeah, right.
That's good money for the cartels.
Yeah.
And
forget about the drugs and the prostitution. This is a lot of making illegal liquor. This is the good deal. Imagine what's his name, Al Capone would have done with this one, huh?
At any rate, it's making the cartels richer.
Oh, yeah. Well, I heard that they were the 8th largest industry in Mexico. They employed 150,000 people.
Okay. So I'm going to relate this to the media, and then I'm saying I'd like to see this as a much bigger media story.
Yeah.
It seems like it would be worthy of discussion, especially let's follow 1,000 miners who come across the border and see where'd they go.
Yeah.
Or I'd like to say, here are people who have just been handed their date for immigration court in 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd they go? And the expression we've used is the press seems strangely incurious. This would be a superb story. Wouldn't everyone want to know how that works? You've just gained another 6,000 residents, or probably 6 million residents. Wouldn't you like to know how that works?
Yeah.
I might like to know how it works. I don't know how it works, but I bet it's hinky. I bet that I would curl my remaining hair if.
Yeah, and of course that now you don't hear much about the DeSantis. You may actually be hearing it right now with this debate going on.
Oh yeah.
About his loading up a bus or a plane or something, and they dropped him off at Martha's Vineyard. I heard that a lot of those guys that got dropped off at Martha's Vineyard, there's a few of them that are still there. This is a pretty damn good deal. You're talking about getting waivers for this, waivers for that. They're taken care of, living with a bunch of rich people in Martha's Vineyard. They're not going anywhere. And in fact, New York had the same thing happen. Mm-hmm. And now all the migrants, a lot of them anyway, end up going to New York. That's where the city itself will pay for all this. At least it did, up until recently. The Adams, the current mayor of the city of New York, he went to the climate change conference in Arabia someplace, but before he left, he reduced the budget of the whole budget of all of New York City, because they're having to pay for it. They're paying in the billions to pay for these migrants that are coming into the place and so on. They're reducing the government essentially in New York by 20%. Holy mackerel! I don't know. Let's face it. You come into the country, you get their free food. The homeless. This is not necessarily the migrants and that, but the homeless. They come to New York and you get free food. You free place to live. You get the free medical care, you get the free dope, you get the free condoms, you get everything is for free for you. Let's go there. But of course, that's New York City. I guess LA is kind of the same thing, though. I mean, they want to go someplace. I've known a lot of homeless people in my time, and they want to go someplace where they're going to get taken care of. They come across. They want you to. Again, this is it's a very generalization, but they make you to feel sorry for them. But they do pretty well. They do pretty well. It's a pretty good deal for homeless. For people that just want to live the fat of the land.
Yeah, so
they're not all so bad.
Yeah, just try not to be the fat of the land.
Bad off. What?
So just try not to be the fat of the land.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just let's see. Let's pop over. You'll forgive me, but I have to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Take a look at another couple of pictures.
Ooh,
and,
so
yeah,
good.
we'll get back to that. Okay, so here's Robert Reich. Or as Rush Limbaugh used to call him, Robert Reich.
He's now a professor at Berkeley.
No surprise. Anyway.
And he was the labor secretary.
He was the labor secretary.
Under Obama, I think it was, wasn't it? Or Clinton. I think it was Clinton.
His PhD, of course, is in economics, and he never saw a bigger government that he didn't like.
Yeah.
you name it. If you can make it government bigger and more expensive, it's good.
Yeah.
So, but I love this where he says, one word can sum up a Trump second term: vengeance. Yeah. He'd weaponized the DOJ to victimize his enemies. He's vowed to investigate the media for treason. He wants to root out leftists from our country, calling them vermin. I look at that and I'm saying, this is the leftist playbook. Scream that Republicans may do the awful things that Democrats are doing. So, in fact, we already have the DOJ weaponized to victimize enemies of the Democrats.
Yeah.
And to cover for bad behavior on the part of Democrats generally. Of the Biden family has done all sorts of things. We have gigantic amounts of money that has flowed into either Joe or his family, specifically related to his term in office and the things that can be done. Mm-hmm. Now, and I keep hearing, this is again the incurious media, I keep hearing folks like CNN and MSNBC saying, claimed without evidence, and the Republicans claim without evidence, and there are Republican committee chairs who are saying, without evidence? He said, I have the bank statements.
Yeah, right.
I have a copy of the check from them to them and from them to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Same day, same amount. He said, who's honest gets loads and loads of money from overseas through a chain of shell companies.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be delighted by that, but it's not happening to me, but it's happening to the Bidens. Can they help it if people overseas like them?
Yeah, right. And it's the same amount of money, basically. It's always, the check is always in the same amount going forward. Nothing is reduced from it. No, right.
And eventually, you see it's starting to be broken up as one family member gets this, and another family member gets that, and the big guy, aka Joe Biden, the president, gets something else. But the long story short is that the DOJ is covering for them, is victimizing his enemies.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes investigation is just a way of saying I'm going to tie somebody up and mess them up. But sometimes investigation is, Mr. Biden, we have you on videotape bragging about strong-arming the previous Ukrainian president to drop a prosecution that might have inconvenienced your son.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how much investigating does that take? Or if you were to say, we'd like to have a few more details about that.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like persecution so much as, you actually talked about doing it, and we'd like to know a little more.
Yeah, it's more than that even. I mean, in a way, I said this before, but I kind of feel sorry for Joe. He was elected senator from the state of Delaware, and before he actually took office, and his wife, with all the kids, the daughter and both sons, Bo and Hunter, in a car, and they were killed. His wife and the daughter were killed, and then Bo ended up dying of some disease. I can't remember exactly what it was, and he ends up with that piece of crap hunter. That's all he's doing is getting himself in trouble with drugs and women and you know, he's not a real good. I don't know.
Now,
He's not something you should be proud of. Put it that way.
Doesn't Biden have a surviving daughter? I think he does.
Maybe he does. Maybe, maybe that was from his second wife, though. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
The reason I'm asking is that there was there's a supposed diary from a daughter of Biden's, which has a bunch of pretty unsavory stuff about Joe in it, and it wound up in the hands of James O'Keefe.
Who's he?
He was the founder of Project Veritas, and of course, it was only a few months ago, the board of directors of Project Veritas.
That's the guy that was taping people.
Threw him out. But yeah, he was getting, people were basically telling you know, in fact, bragging about the nasty things that they were doing. Anyway, as it turns out, first of all, he didn't come by the diary by any heinous means, and the diary had actually been shopped around, and I think he too had actually said, yeah, it's juicy stuff, but I don't think I can verify it. And if I can't verify it, I can't run with it. Yeah. So he wasn't doing anything with it either. Yeah. But the DOJ and the FBI, they came to his house. They took his laptops. They took his everything, shut everything down, and that was supposedly over. I think it might have been in Ashley Biden's diary. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, it was total violation of.
Ashley was his daughter.
I think Ashley was his daughter. I think that's the one. I could be getting this wrong, and since we aren't doing a live call, then you can't call in and can't call and tell me. One.
Yeah, anyway, Robert Reich has been around a long time. I'm surprised he doesn't get quoted that much anymore, but it's again one of those things you see it here. It's free speech. He gets to say all this stuff and so on, but you got to where's he coming from? Some ivory tower in the city of Berkeley on the UC Berkeley campus.
Well, just let's think about the word vengeance. Now, it sort of depends on what it is. If somebody walking by me on the street was to punch me in the mouth, I'd never seen him or said a word to him, and I was to give him a smack right back, would we say, Rob takes vengeance? Or would you say, hey, I gave like I got? Or I don't smack anybody who doesn't smack me. I mean, it's just not in me. Right. But if you do smack me, you can't look at getting smacked back and say, vengeance, how evil, what an injustice. I'm not out here to do anybody an injustice.
Well, let's face it. In politics, is in life and everything. People have sometimes vengeance is the way of doing business. Basically, if somebody's done it to you, you want to do it back to them. I got a couple guys I want to do it to today. I like this with vengeance, but I'm thinking the better of it. It's gonna hurt me more, and it cost me a lot more money anyway. So the heck with it.
That's why we do a lot of things the way we do. We say,
I move on. Put it that way.
It might be momentarily fun to do something. You say, on the other hand, this would ruin my life, and I don't want my life ruined. And so, or I don't want to blow up my community, or I don't want to do bad things. And I've seen this quote several places. I don't know who it's from, but I cherish it. I got it out of Blue Bloods, so it came out of the mouth of Tom Selleck. Mm-hmm. He said, "We think of ourselves by our own good intentions. He says, others see us by our last worst act."
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing about it. Justifying it. Things. I've done that myself. Justify things, and then you kind of step back. Mm-hmm. But other people are going to see it a little differently.
Exactly. So you say,
and then they're going to want vengeance.
Right. Here you are, getting up from something really horrible, and you say, "But I'm really a good person."
Yeah. Right.
And you might be, but it doesn't look that good. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and that's the way that's the way the press will play it too. Sometimes, depending upon, like I always like to say, when people get after somebody for doing something, they don't really go after them for the simple thing like
like Watergate.
yeah, well, Watergate too, I suppose, but it's in terms of general life. You do something and you ride somebody's bike that shouldn't be riding it, so on. They don't say nothing about it. They want to get you for something else. For example, at UCSB, they have these cameras right on campus, but they shine into Isla Vista onto an apartment building. Well, there's some things happen, and the property line is the university, and then the rental property in Isla Vista. And they throw things over the fence and things like that, and the students will just throw garbage over and so on. They really can't get them. So now they watch for something else. And the camera, now they see something else. What they really wanted to do is don't throw stuff over the fence.
Yeah, but they couldn't get you for that.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, basically. But they got some other thing that they can see that happens and so on. That's what they'll get you for. And that's kind of what they're doing, the government does all the time. The people in general do all the time. They'll find something they can get you for. Like we were talking about Flynn before the show and so on. This was something that he said to somebody else, and when the mics were live, that it shouldn't have been, which Obama had done also, by the way. Even he was a sitting president. He wanted to get reelected. Anyway, that's what it said something, and then all of a sudden blown up about, oh my God, it was how terrible this was. He was doing government, and he wasn't. Trump had not been inaugurated even. He had not been sworn in yet.
Anyway, they managed to make the guy resign, and the DOJ was essentially trying to pauperize him, to drain him of money, to threaten him about things that was going to happen to his family and to his son. And as I was saying to you earlier, I looked at that and I say, if you're going to play it that way, that tells me that your actual case is not very good.
Yeah.
Or you take your actual case and run to the judge and say, get a jury, we got the law and the facts on our side. No, if you're trying to crush somebody outside that system, then that means your real case stinks and you're a political POS.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, that they go after him for something that was innocent enough to do and all that, or not, it's just something you didn't do, or not even the crime, but something that some thing that you do as a sure. Go out and get the paper in the morning or something, in your underwear or something like that, right off the bat. That's what they'll do and so on. They're not really after you for that.
No, they couldn't. They want to break your leg some other way, and this gives them an excuse. So I'm just going to just pop over, since you like to talk, and so do I at times, about what goes on with Hamas and others.
I was going to say,
I'm going to bring in a cartoon.
To change the subject, I want to take over the show, but I'm just so fascinated by this whole thing about the war going in Israel. I got a thing in my pocket right now of books that was in the LA Times. Somebody at the paper had gone out and asked all of these people that know, historians and people who have an opinion about this whole process of Middle East and so on, and it got it down to 13 books that he recommended that you read about, and of course all of those authors, they have the answer to how this is going to happen, how they're going to come to a peaceful situation, and it's gotten worse. If anything, we're talking about vengeance and all that. What the Israelis have done, in effect, they killed 13,000 people that were killed when this raids and all, so on and so forth. They've created another 13,000 terrorists of the people that were alive. The sons and daughters and sisters and brothers and wives and so on of the people that were killed. They don't forgive. Of course, at the same time, the Israelis are not going to forgive them the 1,200 people that they had killed. It's just an ongoing thing of they're going to kill each other. Vengeance is the way it is, and that's the way it's been all the time in the Middle East, going back more than the 2,000 years. Even before that, there were Jewish tribes. And all kinds of, they even discuss it now to this day. There are various tribes within the Muslim religion, within the Jewish faith, and in the different countries they come from. My point being that I don't know I don't have, sure as heck don't have an answer for it. But I don't think the peace in the Middle East is, everybody's tried to do it. The guy that just died was Henry, that just died, so he tried to do it, and that didn't work out. Remember that ceremony they had at the White House with Arafat was shaking hands with the other guy? And it lasted 2 weeks, and they still couldn't come up with a peaceful solution to different things there. It's really, really hard to do. In the Middle East, it's really impossible. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I'll tell you one thing, though. My thought here is to advance it somewhat, at least. Netanyahu ought to tell them, okay, we're gonna leave. We'll leave Gaza. We'll leave. Forget about the hostages. You can keep those guys. We're going to get out. We'll let you go back. All we want you to do is one thing, just one thing: recognize the Jewish state as a country. Say that the country should be, that they're a country. Let's face it, most of the nations of the world have recognized Israel as a country. It's only the Middle East, essentially, that have not. They just can't do it. I would see, and they wouldn't do it. I bet at the same they still. Oh yeah, okay. If we do all that stuff, we have to recognize. Well, no, we're not. We cannot recognize Israel as a country. Get real. It is a country, and has been.
You just got your ass kicked by a non-country.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Did somebody who isn't even a country just kick the crap out of you?
Yeah, and that's what the whole idea was Zionism. It was eventually to solve the Jewish problem, but at least to make it different is to have a country for Jews, for Israelis who want to go away in Israel. They wanted to try, by the way, to put them into Madagascar. You remember about that?
No, I'm not old enough.
Well, this is what Hitler wanted them to do: ship all the Jews to Madagascar, and the British control the island. It could very easily have happened. Oh, it's too small an island and so on. It's the second largest island in the world. There are 34 million people live on the island. I'll look this up. There's 34 million people live in Madagascar right now. Well, they could certainly have, since there's only 15 million Jews in the world, they have a lot more room even if they wanted to. And that's, of course, what happened to Jews after they left the Middle East and so on, the diaspora of the Jews. There's Jews in every country in the world. There's an element. In our revolutionary times, there are 3,000 Jews who are living in the colonies, in the various places in the colonies. I don't know if they really had any one colony, but they were there. They were there. No Muslims. I don't think there was any Muslims at all in the revolution. I think there may have been some now I think about it and so on. But again, I'm thinking about this a long time. They've been fighting those wars and all that for a long time, and it's going to continue. Unfortunately, here's the deal. I'll get going on this here. Here's the deal on this as far as what it really amounts to. They've been fighting each other for thousands of years. And it started with sticks and stones and spears and that kind of thing. And that's what's really happened and so on. Now, the modern weapons. Now we have modern weapons that can kill a lot more people than they used to be able to do. They talk about civilian deaths. That didn't start until World War II, where civilians were dropping bombs just to kill civilians. Curtis LeMay found that out. He did firebombing in Tokyo and so on, and it was just to kill off the civilians. Wipe out parts of the city, the big fires, and of course that would kill a lot of civilians. And now it's just kill civilians. That's all you want to do. You don't want to fight in the other territory. You just want to get civilians. That's what Hamas did when they crossed the border. They weren't looking for they did have
looking for soldiers. Yeah.
They just wanted to kill a bunch of people, and they did. And now, of course, the tables have turned, and the Israelis have killed 13,000 people. It's like I say, it's a mess, and it's not going to be solved. It just isn't going to be solved. A lot of people have these ideas that they go over there and they can do it right. It just isn't going to work.
Well, Golda Meir said that, she says, I'm not exactly sure how you negotiate with people whose desired outcome is you dead.
Yeah.
So I thought this might be apropos.
Yeah. What's the other one here? The obvious. They just want
to live in peace.
Live in peace.
So we've heard
Yeah.
what the Palestinian cry has been is, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Yeah.
Well, and by free they mean like free of Jews.
Yeah.
So there is no two-state solution in that worldview. It's a one-state solution. Them with Jews gone.
Yeah.
Probably dead, but certainly gone.
Yeah, well, that's really what it means. Into the sea, they don't want them. They just got to drive them to someplace out to Madagascar. They want to just kill them, and that's what they do. Hitler tried. He didn't succeed. Basically, he didn't kill all the Jews, as it turned out. In fact, he even had people. There's a lot of stories about he had Jews that they needed for their research, for weapons and so on. Guess what? They had to have a lot of Jewish people who knew how to do that kind of research and stuff like that. So they got a pass on going to the camps. It wasn't quite as well. It was pretty thorough, of course. But anyway, yeah, like I said, all these protests and so on. Let me say a little bit. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I only got a couple minutes here. But I'll give you one more subject, this protest business. As you know, Rob, I don't believe in protest at all. I think protest, the definition of protest is violence. Someone's going to get hurt doing stuff like that. Killed, and that's exactly what happens. We say, well, Martin Luther King did it, Mahatma Gandhi did it. No, that was a violence too, done to them. They wanted to be peaceful, but the people they were protesting against, and they were the government basically, did a little damage to these people and so on. And one other thing, by the way, protests that these young people out, these college students and so on, go out and do a lot of protests. A lot of women and men, young girls and young boys, go out and do it and so on. Let me pass a little something along to you, ladies. A lot of guys, you think, are going to the protest for the cause that you're after too, and so on. No, it's not necessarily it isn't the case. You know what he's looking for? Well, he wants. It's easy to get a date. Put it that way. Maybe it to be a little less graphic.
Well, one guy said, "I hate Trump because it gets me laid."
Okay, he said it. So all right, there you go. That's what happens, and I've heard that from many guys. And you can't tell me that guys that are listening to this right now, that isn't the case. I remember going out to the one protest that I went to, and I was married at the time. But I didn't really go out to look at women, and that sort of thing. But that's what a lot of guys, you meet some pretty nice looking women, and you have the same politics and so on. You better keep that in mind, ladies. Anyway, that's enough for me. What else do we want to talk about?
Well, let's get Palestinians in this.
See, right there.
Ceasefire now. So where do you think
they yelling? What are they saying?
Ceasefire now. Before that,
ceasefire now. Yeah.
Before that, it was stop bombing Gaza. Then it became ceasefire now.
Yeah.
But where do you think they were? You don't have to guess. Those people were in the streets of Whitehall. In other words, in the center of London.
London, yeah.
London, the seats of power, and the streets are full of they're full of Muslims screaming, and of course not just Muslims. There's lots of people of other faiths screaming ceasefire now. But to me, it's always it's amusing. To me, this would be like, again, somebody running by me in the street and punching me and hurting me badly, and I came after him. I was going, all right, and he says, ceasefire. Ceasefire. We ain't even begun. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm thinking about. And I've said this before too, of course, and about what they gave with that raid that they did, and they killed those 1,400 people and so on. I don't care whatever else you say about it. Well, it wasn't the same thing as this and that and so on. has given the rightist government of Israel, and Netanyahu, that's what they always call it, rightist government, free reign. Now we can do whatever we want. They say that Hezbollah have 150,000 missiles and so on. Well, the Israelis have the bombs too. They have pretty good bombs. For example, that they bombed that hospital. They say they bombed it and landed in the parking lot of the hospital, actually, and the crater was there, and it didn't look like much and so on. But they said that's the bomb that destroyed they destroyed a lot of cars. There wasn't 500 people killed in that raid, by the way. But then you went to see the rating of what the Israelis are using for bombs and so on. Now you see a crater. This is where a real bomb went off. If you can even see anything in that. They've given the Israelis the free reign. When they fought that war in 1948, they were fighting with sticks and stones. Now they're fighting with the latest equipment, the F-35s and the fighter jet that is the American fighter jet that is the top of the line. This is a thing. And they're doing, when they're bombing now, it's not carpet bombing. Now they pick a building out and they destroy that building. Unfortunately, the buildings around it suffer a little damage too.
Sure. All right. You got a little time for me? I want to give this is sort of Trump-oriented in that we're showing Biden doesn't remember your name. So this has a Cheers theme.
Yeah.
I'd like to just play this for you. It's kind of fun.
Okay.
My boss, President, the last guy, the former head of the, anyway, you had people like the former chairman and leader of the party in Germany.
This is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, listen, Val, you switched on me. This is my wife.
All right, Chuck, thank you very much.
All right, it's Chris, but anyway.
We're running again.
Okay, we only got a couple seconds here. One more minute.
It's almost done.
Okay.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
And they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see the troubles are all the same.
We'll go out on this music.
You wanna be where everybody knows your name.
Well, I got to go along with that myself. I forget names pretty easy too. But of course, I'm not president of the United States.
You may remember when
I have you around to remind me. You know everybody's name.
When I was your director.
Yeah, right.
You'd be wondering about a name, and I had
mic going to the floor.
PA, so I could punch that, and I'd say, "Yeah, that would be Bibi Netanyahu." Or
anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your watching, and we'll be back. We can't be canceled. Thank you.
we'll be back.
We'll be back.